They didn't just visit Earth, they shaped it. What I'm about to tell you will make you question every history book you've ever read, every museum you've ever walked through. Every ancient wonder you were taught was built by primitive humans with copper tools and wooden ramps. The being who showed me their archives didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't apologize. They simply showed me the truth. Thousands of years of hidden history. The real story of ancient Egypt, Sumeria, the Indus Valley, and civilizations your textbooks don't even mention. I saw the pyramids being built, not over decades by slave labor, in ways that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I saw what really happened to the Mayans, the Anasazi, the great cultures that simply vanished without explanation. I saw why humanity keeps forgetting, why we build and collapse, the same cycle over and over, never learning from the past, because the past was taken from us. This isn't about conspiracy theories. This isn't about ancient aliens as entertainment. This is about a systematic erasure of human history that has kept our species in the dark about its own origins. The alien who opened their archives to me did so because they believed humans deserved to know. They believed the time for secrecy has passed, and they chose me to carry this knowledge forward. I warn you now, what you're about to hear is disturbing, not because it's frightening, because it reveals how much has been stolen from you, how much you were never allowed to remember. If you're ready to see the ancient world as it really was, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because what Dr. Elena Vasquez witnessed in those archives didn't just rewrite history, it explained why humanity has been lost for so long. Now let me tell you how it all began. Dr. Elena Vasquez was cataloging pottery shards in the basement of the Smithsonian when the lights went out. Not a flicker, a complete blackout that plunged the storage room into absolute darkness. "Perfect," she muttered, setting down the fragment she had been examining. At 52, with reading glasses she now needed constantly, and knees that complained on stairs, Elena had learned to expect things to go wrong at the worst moments. She felt her way toward the door, hands brushing against shelving units packed with artifacts that most visitors would never see. The Smithsonian's public collection was only a fraction of what they actually held. Down here, in the climate-controlled depths, were objects that raised too many questions, items that didn't fit the accepted narrative, things that were easier to store than to explain. Elena knew this better than anyone. She had spent 30 years studying them. Her hand found the door handle just as the emergency lights kicked on, bathing the room in dim red. She stepped into the corridor and looked both ways. Empty. The usual hum of the ventilation system was silent. The building felt dead. Elena pulled out her phone. No signal. The screen showed 11:47 p.m. She had been down here for hours, lost in work again. Richard used to joke that she would forget to eat, sleep, and breathe if no one reminded her. Richard. Even after 4 years, the thought of him brought a familiar ache. They had met at a conference in Cairo, two young archaeologists arguing over the dating of a tomb. He had been wrong, but charming about it. They were married within a year. For 2 decades, they had traveled the world together, excavating sites, publishing papers, building a shared life around their shared obsession. Then the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, 6 months from discovery to death. Elena had held his hand in the hospice, watching the man she loved disappear piece by piece. After the funeral, she threw herself into work, not field work anymore. She couldn't bear to return to the sites they had explored together. Instead, she requested a transfer to collections, the basement, the forgotten artifacts, the questions that had no answers. It was here, surrounded by objects that shouldn't exist, that Elena had started to doubt everything she had been taught. A copper chisel supposedly used to carve granite with perfect precision. Stone blocks cut with laser-straight edges by people who allegedly hadn't invented the wheel. Maps showing coastlines that hadn't been visible for 12,000 years. The pieces didn't fit. They had never fit. But academia had taught her to ignore the contradictions, to explain away the anomalies, to protect the timeline at all costs. Richard had been braver. In his final months, weakened by treatment but sharp as ever, he had told her things he had never dared publish, connections he had seen, patterns that suggested human history was not a slow climb from primitive to advanced, but something far more complex. Rises and falls, forgotten ages, deliberate erasure. Someone doesn't want us to remember, he had whispered one night, his hand cold in hers. I don't know who, I don't know why. But the evidence is there, Elena, hidden in plain sight. She had dismissed it as the ramblings of a dying man, pain medication, desperation. But now, 4 years later, cataloging yet another impossible artifact, she wasn't so sure. The red emergency lights flickered. Elena froze. Something felt different. The air had changed, a pressure, subtle but unmistakable, like the atmosphere before a storm. She turned slowly. At the end of the corridor, where the shadows were deepest, something moved. Hello? Elena's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Security? Is someone there? No response. But the movement came again, a shape separating from the darkness, tall, too tall, moving toward her with a fluidity that wasn't quite human. Elena's heart began to pound. She backed up, her hand reaching for the door behind her, but her legs felt heavy, unresponsive, as if the air itself had thickened around her. The figure stepped into the edge of the emergency light. Elena stopped breathing. It was humanoid, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, but the proportions were elongated. The skin was a pale grayish blue, smooth and almost luminescent, and the eyes, enormous, completely black, reflecting the red emergency lights like pools of oil. This is not real, Elena whispered. Her voice came out strangled. This is a hallucination, stress, exhaustion. I'm having a breakdown. You are not hallucinating, Dr. Vasquez. The voice appeared inside her mind, clear and calm. And you are not in danger. I have come specifically to find you. Elena pressed her back against the door. Her fingers fumbled for the handle, but her body wouldn't obey properly. Fear had locked her muscles. What are you? What do you want? I am what your ancestors called a god, a watcher, a builder. The creature took another step closer. I am one of those who shaped your ancient world, and I have come because you have been asking the right questions, the questions no one else is brave enough to ask. Elena's mind raced. 30 years of academic training screamed that this was impossible, but 30 years of studying impossible artifacts whispered something else. The objects, she breathed, the things that don't fit the timeline, they're connected to you, to your kind. They are remnants of our work, fragments of ages your species has been made to forget. And you, Elena Vasquez, have dedicated your life to studying them. The creature's eyes seemed to pulse with inner light. That dedication has not gone unnoticed. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't know if they were from fear or something else, something that felt almost like recognition. My husband, she said quietly. Richard, he knew, didn't he? He saw the pattern. Your husband was perceptive. He saw shadows of the truth, but he died before he could fully understand. The creature extended one long hand toward her. I can show you what he glimpsed, what your species has been denied for millennia, the true history of your ancient world, all of it. Elena stared at the outstretched hand, gray skin, long fingers, an invitation that could not be real but felt more real than anything she had experienced in years. Why me? Why now? Because the time for secrets is ending, and because you have nothing left to lose. You have already sacrificed everything for questions that have no answers. I am offering you the answers. Elena thought about Richard, dying with mysteries unsolved. She thought about the basement full of impossible artifacts. She thought about 30 years of frustration, of being told to stop asking, to accept the official story, to protect her career. She had protected her career, and what had it gotten her? An empty apartment, a dead husband, a life spent cataloging things she wasn't allowed to understand. Elena reached out and took the creature's hand. The moment their skin touched, the world dissolved into light. Elena felt herself falling, or rising, she couldn't tell which. Direction had lost meaning. There was only light and motion, and a sensation of being pulled apart and reassembled at the molecular level. Then it stopped. She was standing in a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them, and everywhere, on every surface, lights pulsed in patterns that felt almost like breathing. Where am I? Elena spun around, searching for the creature. What is this place? You are in what your languages would inadequately call an archive. The voice came from behind her. She turned to find the being standing a few feet away, those enormous eyes watching her with something that might have been patience. A repository of records spanning millions of your years. Everything my species has witnessed on your world is stored here. Elena's scientific mind fought to reassert itself. That's impossible. I was just in the Smithsonian basement. This can't be a physical location. It exists outside what you perceive as physical space. The creature moved past her, gesturing toward the shifting symbols on the walls. Your physics is beginning to understand that reality has more dimensions than the 3 you experience. This archive exists in one of those dimensions, accessible but hidden. Elena followed, her fear gradually giving way to the curiosity that had driven her entire career. The symbols on the walls seemed to respond to the creature's presence, rearranging themselves, forming images she almost recognized. You said you shaped the ancient world. What does that mean exactly? It means exactly what it sounds like. My species arrived on your planet approximately 450,000 years ago. We found primitive hominids with potential but no guidance. We accelerated your development. We built the structures that your archaeologists cannot explain. We taught your ancestors the foundations of mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, and architecture. Elena stopped walking. You're saying human civilization was engineered? That we didn't develop on our own? I am saying you were assisted. The creature turned to face her. There is a difference. The capacity was always within your species. We simply activated it earlier than it would have emerged naturally. Why? What did you want from us? The question hung in the air. For a moment, the creature was silent. Then it raised one hand and touched the wall beside them. The symbols exploded into light. Elena gasped as images surrounded her, 3-dimensional, moving, more vivid than any technology she had ever seen. She was standing in the middle of a scene from ancient Earth. She recognized the landscape, the Nile Valley. But it looked different, greener, more alive. And there were structures along the riverbank that no history book had ever shown. Massive buildings of white stone, towers that seemed to touch the sky, and moving among them, humans and beings like the one beside her, working together. This is Egypt, Elena breathed, but it's not like anything in the archaeological record. This is Egypt before the last catastrophe, approximately 12,500 years ago. The creature's voice was tinged with something that sounded like sadness, before the memory was erased. Elena watched as the scene shifted. She saw the pyramids being constructed, not with ramps and slaves as she had been taught, with technology that seemed to make stone weightless, massive blocks floating through the air, guided by beings with devices she couldn't comprehend. Acoustic levitation, she whispered. Some researchers theorized it, but there was never any proof. The proof was removed, along with most evidence of our involvement. The creature waved its hand, and the scene changed again. This time, Elena saw destruction. Water. Massive walls of water sweeping across civilizations, buildings crumbling, people running, and then silence. Emptiness. The flood, Elena said quietly. The global cataclysm, it was real. It was real, and it was not entirely natural. The creature's eyes met hers. But that is a revelation for later. First, you must understand what existed before, what was lost, what your species has been trying to remember ever since. Elena felt tears on her cheeks. She wasn't sure when she had started crying. The weight of what she was seeing, the validation of every question she had ever asked, was overwhelming. Richard was right, she whispered. He saw the pattern. He knew something was being hidden. Your husband was a perceptive man. He lacked only the final pieces. The creature extended its hand toward the swirling images. I'm going to give you those pieces now, Elena. I'm going to show you the complete history. The rises and falls, the interventions and the erasures. The truth about why humanity keeps forgetting. Elena wiped her face with trembling hands. Why me? Of all the researchers, all the archaeologists, all the people asking questions, why choose me? Because you have suffered enough to be humble, because you have lost enough to be hungry, and because you carry your husband's unfinished work in your heart. The creature's voice softened. He deserved to see this. He earned it. But time ran out. I am giving it to you instead, so that his questions can finally have answers." Elena thought about Richard in his hospital bed, talking about hidden patterns and deliberate erasure. She thought about his hand growing cold in hers, about the decades of research that had led nowhere because the truth wasn't allowed to be found. "Show me," she said. "Show me everything." The creature nodded slowly. "The archive will reveal what your species has forgotten. But I warn you, Elena, this knowledge carries weight. Once you see the truth of the ancient world, you will never be able to unsee it. You will understand why some truths are hidden and why the hiding must end." Elena squared her shoulders. She had spent 30 years in the dark, studying fragments, guessing at connections. "I've waited my whole career for this. I've waited my whole life." The creature raised both hands. The walls of the archive began to glow brighter. The symbols moved faster. And Elena Vasquez, widow, archaeologist, and keeper of impossible artifacts, stepped into the true history of the ancient world. The archive opened around her like a flower blooming in fast motion. Elena found herself standing on a platform of light, suspended in the center of an infinite space filled with images. Past, present, and what might have been future swirled around her in layers she could barely comprehend. Every direction she looked, history unfolded. "We will begin at the beginning." The creature stood beside her, its form somehow more defined here, more present. "When my species first arrived on your world." The images coalesced into a single scene. Earth from orbit, but an Earth Elena barely recognized. The continents were in different positions. Ice covered much of the northern hemisphere, and descending through the atmosphere, craft of impossible design. 450,000 years ago, Elena whispered. "You said that's when you arrived." "Oh, correct. We came for resources initially. Your planet was rich in elements we needed. Gold, primarily. But also other minerals that your science has not yet learned to value." The scene shifted to the surface. Elena saw the beings, dozens of them, establishing what looked like mining operations. But there was something wrong. The work was slow, difficult. The beings themselves seemed to struggle with Earth's conditions. "We were not designed for your gravity, your atmosphere. The labor required to extract resources was immense. After thousands of years, there was unrest among our workers. A solution was needed." Elena watched as the scene changed. A laboratory. Beings like the one beside her working with genetic material. And on the tables, primitive hominids, early humans. "You created us," Elena said, "to work for you. We modified existing species, accelerated evolution that would have taken millions of years, created beings capable of mining, of building, of following instructions." The creature paused. "We created you as workers." But something unexpected happened. The images showed the early modified humans. They were working, yes, but they were also doing something else, talking to each other, making tools beyond what they had been shown, drawing pictures on cave walls, creating music. "You developed faster than we anticipated. Consciousness expanded beyond our designs. You began to ask questions, to wonder, to create for the joy of creating, not because you were instructed to." The creature's voice carried something like wonder. "You became more than we intended." Elena watched as the scene shifted across thousands of years. Humans spreading across the globe, developing agriculture, building the first cities, and always the beings watching, sometimes intervening, sometimes simply observing. "The gods of ancient mythology," Elena said. "Zeus, Osiris, Enlil, they were all your kind. Different names for the same beings, or for different beings among our kind. We were not unified, Elena. Some of us believed humans should be kept controlled, used for the purposes we created them for. Others believed you deserved freedom to develop on your own, and some, the creature's eyes met hers, believed you deserved to know the truth." The images shifted again. Elena recognized the landscape, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. But what she saw there made her gasp. Cities of extraordinary sophistication, towers reaching toward the sky, technology that shouldn't exist for another 6,000 years, and humans, ordinary humans, walking streets that were cleaner and more organized than many modern cities. "This is Sumeria? This is what it really looked like?" "This is Sumeria at its height, before the records were destroyed, before the history was simplified into mythology. Your species achieved extraordinary things under our guidance. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, architecture. We taught you the foundations, and you built upon them with creativity that surprised even us. Elena watched as Sumerian scholars mapped the stars with precision that wouldn't be matched until the invention of the telescope. She saw surgeons performing operations with tools and techniques that modern medicine was only beginning to rediscover. She saw artists creating works of beauty that would have been masterpieces in any era. Why isn't any of this in the archaeological record? Because the archaeological record was curated. The creature waved its hand and the scene changed. Fire, destruction, libraries burning, temples being demolished, artifacts being buried or destroyed. When civilizations fell, the evidence of their true achievements was systematically erased. By whom? Sometimes by conquering armies who didn't understand what they were destroying, sometimes by religious authorities who saw the old knowledge as threatening, and sometimes the creature paused by members of my own kind who believed humanity had been given too much too soon. The scene shifted to Egypt. Elena saw the Giza Plateau, but not as she had ever seen it. The pyramids were there, but they were gleaming white, covered in polished limestone that reflected the sun like mirrors, and around them, structures that didn't exist in any modern photograph. Smaller pyramids, temples, an entire complex that dwarfed what remained today. The pyramids, Elena breathed. How are they really built? Watch. The image zoomed in. Elena saw workers, thousands of them, but they weren't struggling with ramps and ropes. They were using devices that fit in their hands, devices that made the massive stone blocks float. Acoustic technology combined with focused intention, the creature explained. Sound frequencies that neutralize the effect of gravity on dense matter. Your ancestors didn't drag those blocks, they sang them into place. Elena watched as blocks weighing dozens of tons floated through the air, guided by workers who seemed to be chanting in unison. The precision was extraordinary. Blocks fitted together so perfectly that a piece of paper couldn't slip between them. We've theorized about this, but there was never any proof. The proof was removed, as was the technology. After the Great Catastrophe, much was lost, and what wasn't lost was hidden. What great catastrophe? The images shifted again. Elena felt a chill run through her, despite the warmth of the archive. She was looking at the same Earth she had seen before, but something was different. Something was wrong in the sky. A massive object, dark against the stars, moving toward the planet. Approximately 12,500 years ago, a catastrophe struck your world. The creature's voice was heavy. Some of it was natural. Cosmic debris, shifting poles, rising seas. But some of it, the creature paused, was assisted. Elena watched in horror as the object in the sky drew closer. As its gravitational pull began to affect the planet, she saw oceans rise, continents shift, cities that had stood for thousands of years crumble and wash away in moments. The flood, she whispered, the global flood that appears in every ancient culture. Not just a flood, a reset. The creature's eyes were dark with something that looked like grief. There were those among my kind who believed humanity had advanced too far, had learned too much, had become too difficult to control. They argued that a correction was necessary. Your own kind caused the catastrophe? They used a natural event and amplified it, made certain that the destruction was thorough, made certain that the civilizations that had developed most rapidly were completely eliminated. The creature's hand clenched briefly. It was genocide, Elena, on a scale your species has never comprehended. Elena felt sick. She watched as the waters rose over cities she had just seen thriving, watched as millions of people who had built wonders that modern engineering couldn't replicate, were swept away like insects. How many died? The global population before the catastrophe was approximately 500 million. After, less than 1 million survived, and those survivors were scattered, traumatized, stripped of all technology and knowledge. They had to begin again from almost nothing. Elena watched the aftermath, small groups of humans huddled on mountaintops, in caves, struggling to survive in a world that had been transformed overnight, and among them, occasionally, beings like the one beside her, helping, teaching, but teaching less than before, teaching only the basics. You helped them rebuild, but you didn't give them back what they had lost. We were forbidden. After the catastrophe, there were new rules. Humanity was to be allowed to develop naturally. No more direct technology transfer, no more open presence. We became myths, stories told around fires, gods who had abandoned their children. The images showed centuries passing, humans slowly rebuilding, rediscovering agriculture, forming new civilizations. But always, something was missing, a gap in the collective memory, a sense of loss that couldn't be explained. That's why we keep finding things that don't fit, Elena said. The ancient structures that are too precise, the maps that are too accurate, the artifacts that are too advanced. They're leftovers, fragments from before the reset. Yes, the creature nodded slowly. Despite everything that was done to erase the previous age, some evidence survived, hidden in caves, buried under sediment, encoded in myths that were dismissed as fantasy. Your entire career has been spent studying the fragments of a destroyed civilization. Elena thought about the basement of the Smithsonian, the objects that raised too many questions, the artifacts that were quietly stored away because they threatened the accepted timeline. The institutions know, she said quietly. They've been hiding this deliberately. Some institutions know pieces, others simply follow protocols established long ago without understanding why. The suppression of anomalous evidence has been ongoing for centuries, not always consciously, but effectively. The images shifted again. Elena saw different civilizations now, the Mayans, the Anasazi, cultures that had achieved extraordinary things and then simply vanished. What happened to them? The civilizations that disappeared without explanation? Some were destroyed by natural disasters, others by war or famine. But some, the creature hesitated, were removed. Removed? When a civilization begins to recover too much of the old knowledge, when they start to remember what was taken from them, there are those who intervene. The Mayans developed astronomical knowledge that approached what existed before the catastrophe. They were calculating cycles of time that connected them to the ancient past. They had to be stopped. Elena felt anger rising in her chest. Your kind has been sabotaging human development for 12,000 years? Not my kind as a whole. A faction. The same faction that caused the catastrophe. They believe humanity is dangerous, that if allowed to fully develop, you will threaten the balance of power in this region of the galaxy. They see the suppression of your species as a necessary precaution. And you? What do you believe? The creature was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, its voice was different, softer, more personal. I believe they are wrong. I believe humanity has proven, again and again, that consciousness cannot be permanently suppressed. Every time you are knocked down, you rise again. Every time knowledge is destroyed, you rediscover it. Every time you are told you are primitive and insignificant, you create art and music and mathematics that prove otherwise. The images around them shifted one final time. Elena saw the modern world, cities, technology, humans reaching into space, and alongside it she saw the problems, war, inequality, environmental destruction. You are at another crossroads now. The creature gestured at the swirling images. Your technology is approaching levels that existed before the catastrophe. Your consciousness is beginning to awaken on a collective level, and the faction that has suppressed you for millennia is watching, waiting to see if another reset is necessary. Elena felt cold. They would do it again? Destroy everything? They are debating it. The signs they watch for are appearing, humans questioning official narratives, ancient knowledge being rediscovered, psychic abilities emerging in increasing numbers of individuals. You are beginning to remember, and there are those who find that very threatening. Why are you telling me this? What can one person do against beings who can destroy civilizations? One person can do nothing. The creature's eyes met hers with intensity. But one person can inform other persons, who inform others. Until the truth reaches enough minds that it cannot be suppressed, the faction maintains control through secrecy, through the belief that humans are alone in the universe, that your history is exactly as you were taught, that you are primitive beings who have never achieved anything greater than what exists today. Every person who learns the truth weakens their control. Elena looked around at the archive, the millions of years of history, the evidence of human potential, that had been systematically erased. Can I take any of this with me? Proof that I can show others? The creature shook its head slowly. Physical evidence can be confiscated, destroyed, explained away, but memory cannot. What you have seen here is now part of you. You will carry it in your consciousness, and when you speak, those who are ready to hear will feel the truth of it. That's not very scientific. No, it is not. The creature almost seemed to smile. But you have spent 30 years gathering scientific evidence, and it changed nothing. The suppression systems are too effective. Evidence disappears. Researchers are discredited. Studies are buried. The only thing that cannot be controlled is the awakening of consciousness itself, one mind at a time. Ilona thought about Richard, about his deathbed revelations, about the questions he had asked that she had dismissed as medication-induced rambling. My husband saw this, pieces of it. He tried to tell me. He glimpsed the pattern. He didn't have access to the full picture, but his intuition was accurate. The creature moved closer to Elena. He would want you to continue, to share what he couldn't, to finish the work he started. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. All those years of thinking Richard had been delusional at the end. All those years of dismissing his insights as the ramblings of a dying mind. He had been right about everything. I miss him, she whispered. I miss him so much. Consciousness does not end with the body. The creature's voice was gentle. What you loved about Richard, his curiosity, his courage, his passion for truth, these qualities exist beyond physical form. He is not lost. He has simply changed form. Elena wiped her eyes. That sounds like religious comfort, not evidence. It is both. The archive can show you, if you wish, the nature of consciousness after physical death, the continuation that your species has intuited but been unable to prove. Elena hesitated. Part of her wanted to see. Part of her was afraid of what she might learn. Later, she said finally. First, I need to understand what to do with what you've already shown me, the ancient history, the suppression, the faction that wants to reset humanity again. The creature nodded, something like approval in its alien features. You will return to your world. You will continue your work, but now you will understand the context. The artifacts you study are not mysteries to be solved. They are messages from your ancestors. Proof that humanity achieved greatness before. Proof that you can achieve it again. And the faction, the ones who want another reset? They are powerful, but not omnipotent. Their greatest weapon is ignorance. Every human who awakens to the truth is a small victory against them. Enough small victories create large change. The archive began to dim around them. The images faded. Elena felt the strange sensation of being pulled back toward physical reality. Wait, she said. Will I see you again? Will I have access to the archive again? If you need guidance, ask, not out loud, in your consciousness. Those of us who support human awakening are listening. We cannot intervene directly, but we can guide. We can suggest. We can illuminate paths that might otherwise remain dark. The light grew brighter. Elena felt herself dissolving again, returning to whatever form she had left behind. Remember, Elena Vasquez. The creature's voice echoed through the light. You are not primitive. You are not alone. You are the descendants of a great civilization that was destroyed but not defeated, and the time has come to remember. The archive disappeared. Elena opened her eyes. She was standing in the basement of the Smithsonian. The emergency lights had been replaced by normal fluorescent glow. The hum of the ventilation system had returned. Everything looked exactly as it had before the blackout, but nothing was the same. Elena looked at her hands. They were trembling. She looked at the artifacts on the shelves around her, objects she had studied hundreds of times. Now she understood what they really were. Not mysteries, messages, fragments of a destroyed world waiting to be understood. She walked slowly to her desk, sat down in her chair, and stared at the pottery shard she had been cataloging when the lights went out. It was decorated with symbols. Symbols she had always classified as decorative. Now, with what she had seen in the archive, she recognized them. They were a mathematical sequence, a message encoded in clay thousands of years ago by ancestors who knew their civilization was ending, who wanted to leave something for whoever came after. Elena picked up the shard with reverent hands. I understand now, she whispered to the empty room. I finally understand. and for the first time since Richard's death, Elena Vasquez felt hope. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of a lecture hall at Georgetown University. The room was packed, standing room only. People lined the walls and sat in the aisles. She had not expected this. It had started small. A paper she published challenging the accepted timeline of the Sphinx. Carbon dating she had quietly commissioned that placed the water erosion patterns at least 10,000 years before the supposed construction date. Evidence she had gathered from the Smithsonian basement, artifacts that had been ignored for decades, now presented in a new context. The academic establishment had attacked her immediately. Her former colleagues called her a crank. Her department chair suggested she take a leave of absence. 3 journals rejected her papers without peer review. But something else happened too. People started listening. Her first YouTube interview got 2 million views in a week. Her podcast appearances crashed servers. Emails flooded her inbox from ordinary people who had always sensed something was wrong with the official history, who had visited ancient sites and felt the impossibility of what they were told, who had questions they had been afraid to ask. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Dr. Vasquez, a student in the front row, raised her hand. If what you're saying is true, if ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we're taught, why would anyone want to hide that? What's the motivation? Elena smiled. She had been asked this question 100 times now, and each time she chose her words carefully. Control, she said simply. If you believe humanity is on a steady upward trajectory, that we've never been more advanced than we are today, then you trust the current systems. You believe the authorities know best. You don't question why things are the way they are. She clicked to the next slide, images of the impossible artifacts, the Antikythera mechanism, the Baghdad battery, the Piri Reis map. But if you understand that human civilization has risen and fallen multiple times, that we've achieved greatness before and lost it, then you start asking different questions. How did we lose it? Who benefits from us not knowing? And most importantly, what are we capable of that we've forgotten? The room was silent. Elena could feel the shift in attention. Not just curiosity anymore, recognition. She had learned to sense it over the past months. The awakening that happened when someone encountered the truth. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but it was real. A subtle change in the energy field around a person, a light that hadn't been there before. After the lecture, students surrounded her with questions. She answered as many as she could, signed copies of the book she had self-published, after every traditional publisher rejected it, the book that had sold 200,000 copies in 3 months through word of mouth alone. Walking back to her hotel that evening, Elena felt the familiar warmth in her chest, the presence she had learned to recognize. You are doing well. The voice appeared in her mind, gentle and approving. The seeds are spreading. I'm just telling the truth, Elena said quietly, not caring if anyone on the street thought she was talking to herself. The truth does the rest. That is all any teacher can do. Elena had not seen the creature since that night in the Smithsonian basement, but the connection remained. In moments of doubt, guidance would come. In moments of despair, encouragement. She was not alone. She had never been alone. The changes in her life had been dramatic. She had resigned from the Smithsonian after her department tried to have her committed for psychological evaluation. She had sold the apartment she had shared with Richard. She traveled now, constantly, lecturing at universities that would have her, speaking at conferences that the mainstream dismissed as fringe. But the mainstream was shrinking. Every month, more evidence emerged. Researchers emboldened by Elena's example came forward with their own anomalous findings. Archaeologists who had kept quiet for decades finally spoke. A network was forming, not organized, not centralized, just a growing web of people who had seen through the lie. Elena's phone buzzed, a message from a colleague in Peru. They had found something in a cave near Cusco, artifacts that shouldn't exist, technology that matched descriptions in her book. Could she come? She smiled and typed her response. On my way. This was her life now, following the threads of the suppressed history, finding the fragments that had survived the erasure, connecting with others who were doing the same work in different parts of the world. The faction the creature had warned her about was real. She had encountered their influence several times. Funding that mysteriously dried up, research that disappeared from databases, colleagues who suddenly changed their positions and stopped returning her calls. But they couldn't stop everything. There were too many people waking up, too many questions being asked, too many fragments being discovered. 3 months after the Georgetown lecture, Elena received a different kind of message. This one came in her dreams, clearer and more vivid than any she had experienced before. She found herself back in the archive, the infinite space of swirling images and pulsing light. And the creature was there, waiting. "You have done more than we hoped." Its voice carried warmth. "The awakening is accelerating. Critical mass approaches." "What happens at critical mass?" Elena asked. "The collective consciousness shifts. What was hidden becomes visible. What was suppressed becomes accessible. Humanity will begin to remember, not just intellectually, but cellularly. The genetic memories of the ancient world will activate. And the faction? The ones who want another reset? They are concerned. They are debating intervention, but the more humanity awakens, the more difficult intervention becomes. Consciousness cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. They may delay the awakening. They cannot prevent it." Elena looked around at the archive, the millions of years of history recorded there. "Will I ever see all of it? The full record?" "In time. As your consciousness expands, you will be able to access more. The archive is not a place, it is a state of awareness. The more you awaken, the more you can perceive." Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years: excitement, not for discoveries or publications or academic recognition, excitement for what humanity was becoming. "Richard would have loved this," she said quietly. The creature's eyes seemed to soften. "He is aware, Elena. Consciousness continues. He knows what you are doing, and he is proud." Elena woke in her hotel room with tears on her face, but they were not tears of grief. They were tears of joy. She got up, made coffee, and opened her laptop. There were 50 new emails waiting, invitations to speak, research findings to review, connections to make. The work continued. 1 year after her encounter in the Smithsonian basement, Elena Vasquez stood on the Giza Plateau at sunrise. She had come with a group of researchers from 6 different countries. They were here to conduct tests that the Egyptian authorities had finally, reluctantly approved. Ground-penetrating radar, acoustic analysis, measurement technologies that hadn't existed a decade ago. Elena placed her hand on the limestone blocks of the Great Pyramid. She felt the energy humming through them, the same energy she had seen in the archive, when the blocks floated through the air, guided by sound and intention. "Sir, what do you think we'll find?" one of her colleagues asked. Elena smiled. "Confirmation of what humanity always knew but was taught to forget." The sun rose over the desert, painting the ancient stones gold, and Elena Vasquez, archaeologist, widow, and keeper of forbidden knowledge, felt the weight of 12,000 years of suppressed history beginning to lift. The ancient world was not lost. It was waiting to be remembered, and humanity, finally, was ready to remember. Dr. Elena Vasquez spent 30 years studying fragments she wasn't allowed to understand, cataloging mysteries she was told to ignore, protecting a career that demanded she stop asking questions. One encounter in a museum basement changed everything. The history you were taught in school is incomplete, not by accident, by design. For 12,000 years, the true story of human civilization has been suppressed. The achievements of your ancestors have been erased. The evidence has been hidden, destroyed, or explained away. But the truth is surfacing. All over the world, researchers are finding artifacts that shouldn't exist. Structures that couldn't have been built with the tools history says were available. Maps that show coastlines from before the last ice age. Evidence of advanced civilizations that official timelines say never existed. You felt this. When you stood before the pyramids or Stonehenge or Machu Picchu, something inside you knew. The explanations didn't add up. The timeline didn't make sense. The questions nobody would answer kept nagging at you. That feeling was your genetic memory trying to surface. The knowledge your ancestors carried, suppressed, but not destroyed. Elena learned that humanity has risen to greatness before. We built wonders that modern engineering struggles to replicate. We understood mathematics and astronomy and medicine in ways we're only now beginning to rediscover. And we lost it all, not to time, not to accident, to deliberate destruction by those who feared what we might become. They are still watching. still debating whether humanity needs another reset. But something has changed. Too many people are waking up. Too many questions are being asked. Too many fragments are being pieced together. The suppression systems that worked for millennia are failing. You are part of that failure. Every person who questions the official story, every mind that opens to possibilities beyond what they were taught, every voice that speaks the forbidden truth, you are the crack in the wall that has kept humanity in darkness. If this story stirred something in you, leave a comment. Share what you felt. Share what you've always suspected but were afraid to say out loud, because every voice adds to the chorus that is becoming impossible to silence. And if you want more stories like this, more revelations about what has been hidden, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. The ancient world was not primitive. Your ancestors were not ignorant, and you are not powerless. The truth is rising, one awakening at a time, and nothing can stop it now.